Okay, I'm very happy to be back with Beacon. As Amy noted, I spoke, I think it was in September, to the sales and marketing team. I'm Janet Falk. I'm a public relations and marketing communications professional, as you can see from my custom background here. I'm based in New York and I deal with clients all around the country. I focus on attorneys who have a solo practice or a small firm. I also work with consultants and business owners and financial services firms. Today, you will learn about media relations and how you can be working better with the press. So here's the question I often ask: why her and not me? Today, you will learn how you can be the one reporters call. Now, I ask this question, why her and not me, because I'm sure this has happened to you. You've seen someone else that you know who has a similar business or practice to you quoted in the news, and you're thinking, why are they talking to her and not me when I know everything about that subject and I'm much better looking, right? So here is your answer. Reporters call the people they know. They don't call someone they never heard of, because why would a reporter call you unless they know who you are and what you have to say about a subject, and most importantly, why someone else should care. Today, you will learn how to connect with a reporter in a professional manner. You will learn to develop and then send your media profile. And by the way, Zoe sent you as an attachment or a link to a sample media profile. So I want you to get that now so that you will have it when we get to that part of our presentation. So to connect with a reporter in a professional way, you're going to send them your media profile. You're also going to be able to assemble a media list. So which reporters are you going to be in touch with? You're going to learn how to be more quotable when you have that conversation with a reporter. And finally, when you get that news story, you will learn today how to promote it so that your clients and referral sources and prospective clients and even other reporters will be able to read it. Now, often I ask, why is it that anyone wants to be in the news besides attracting clients? So Beacon, speak up. Why do you want to be in the news besides attracting clients?
Be viewed as being knowledgeable so that your clients that you already have feel more confident that you're the right person to guide them and lead them.
Great. Yes.
Stay relevant.
That's good. Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to move on now and give you some answers and we'll see where they overlap. So one thing is you might want to gain referrals, right? Because if there's some change in the market that you're talking about and a referral source says, gee, that's going to affect my client, Tom or Mary, then they will be thinking of you. Another thing, and this is something that was just mentioned, is you want to build your reputation and your brand. You want to be known as the consultant or the professional who does X. Maybe you want to develop alliances and partnerships with other people who are in a similar field so that you have overlapping interests and might be able to work together. And this is something that was mentioned. You want to maintain your contacts, the people that you worked with before at your previous job or at your previous project, or the people who were on a committee with you at some organization. Maybe you want to recruit employees, because doesn't every young professional want to work for that hot firm that's always getting in the news? Perhaps you want to be seen on the radar by local elected officials, because they may be one of your target audiences, and you want them to know about the services you provide. And finally, if reporters call the people they know, who do conference organizers call? They call the people that they see in the news. So I want you to consider that it's not just to get clients, but there are many other audiences out there who are referral sources, who are people that you have lost contact with, but that you did business with in the past, who are potential employees, elected officials, and even conference organizers who, when seeing you in the news, will think that person has their finger on the ball and understands what's happening in our local market and in our industry. I should talk to that person. Now, I listen to the world's greatest radio station, and so do you, and so does everyone you know. It's WIIFM. And if you haven't heard of it before, tune in. It stands for What's in It for Me? And this is how everybody thinks. How can I get ahead with that information? So if you want to get in touch with a reporter, they're listening to WIIFM too. And this is what they're going to ask. First of all, they're going to ask, why you? Why should a reporter talk to you and not your colleague down the hall or your competitor across town? You have to convey that you know what's happening in the local area or in the industry. The second question is, why now? What is happening now that people need to know more about? Has there been some change in the law or the regulation or in a municipal ordinance, and people have to be in compliance by a certain date? The reporter didn't hear from you last week or last month. What is happening now that they need to share with their audience and their readers? And the third question, and if you learn nothing from me today but this, it is, why should anyone care? Whether you're talking about an individual, a business owner, a corporate executive, why should they care about what Amy Anderson or Zoe Toy or Janet Falk has to say? Because what you have to say will help someone else, an individual, a business owner, or a corporate executive, to save time, save money, and make more money. So in the media profile that we're about to review, you will see that we will address these three questions: why you, and why now, and why anyone should care, because if they follow your insight, they will save time, save money, and make more money. Now you will say, Janet, this is all very interesting, but how do we know this works with dealing with reporters? And I'll tell you, this is what a reporter wants. A reporter said this once to me at an event. I want a 50-word explanation of what an attorney knows about a subject to determine whether it is worth calling the attorney. Now, this fellow wrote for a legal publication, but do you think it's different for any other reporter talking to any other professional service provider? Of course not. They want the same thing, a short explanation of what you know in order to discover whether or not it's going to be worthwhile to call you and get some insight. So now take out that media profile that I mentioned, and we can go over it together. I want to point out that this is not a resume or a CV with your experience and your education. It's not your bio with all your awards and achievements and your publications and your speaking engagements. All of that is on your website and on your LinkedIn profile, and it confirms that you are who you say you are. But that's not going to help a reporter. They want to know what you know that's going to help their readers. So a media profile is a professional way to introduce yourself to a reporter and deliver succinct information in a way that they can act on it. The first part, as you can see, is your contact information. So here you see what I would have on mine. It's my name, my company, my title, my email address, my website, my phone number, and so on. You can even put your physical address, which may be required to be in compliance with your professional standards, for example, attorneys. Now, the next part is going to be a summary of your background, only 3 or 4 sentences, no longer. So you can see this is my summary. I'm a public relations and marketing communications professional. I have 30 years experience. and I work with clients in the legal sector. I work with other clients too, but let's just focus on one at a time. And I focus on a certain kind of attorney with a small firm or a solo practice.
Janet, I'm just going to stop you there. If for those of you who want to have an example of this, Zoe did put it in the chat with a link, so you can pull that up. And she also attached it on the invite this morning that she sent. So if you want to take a look at it, that's great.
Okay, thank you, Amy, for reminding us. Now that I've summarized myself, I'm going to be a little more explicit about the kind of work that I do and the specific industry that I focus on. So I work with legal professionals and I help them with media relations, website content, LinkedIn profiles, and marketing communications. You can see how this is a little more detailed. Next, I'm going to talk about trends that people need to know more about. Reporters know what already happened. Everybody knows that. They want to know what's going to happen before it happens. So that's what we're going to highlight. A topic that no one is paying attention to, and only a sophisticated consultant like yourself could explain it in layman's language so that other people will understand why it's important. So for example, I might talk about the importance of your digital presence, right? Your website, your LinkedIn profile, the materials that you make available online. I might talk about the importance of online activity, getting involved in LinkedIn, if it's important to your audience, Facebook and Twitter, and so on. So you can see how different this is from a traditional bio, because you're trying to give the reporter ideas about what they might write about so that they will have you as a source for content. Finally, I like to think that you're more than a piece of paper, and I'll include a quote. So here's something I talk about often. Attorneys need to incorporate media strategy in their litigation strategy. And on the defense side, they need to anticipate that the other side is going to use the media. Because my experience with attorneys is many of them do not consider the role of media attention in litigating their case. Finally, beyond the quote, I have who to contact to get in touch with me, because I'm a very busy consultant and I don't have time to take a lot of calls. So I want you to talk to my assistant or to my public relations consultant. Now, in your media profile, you can see I've provided an example, but I also have provided a worksheet so that you can develop your own media profile and then get in touch with me. I offer a free strategic communications consultation. We can review your media profile and your strategy. So now you have your media profile and you're thinking, who am I going to send this to? I don't know any reporters. So let's think about what reporters do, which is the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, and why. And we'll apply it to this process. So who do you want to read a news story about you? Who do you want to read that news story? And what idea will they read about? And what will they do about this idea? So let's say that there's some deadline for a municipal ordinance or a law or a regulation. So they're going to read about this idea that this deadline is coming. It's going to apply to a certain target market. And what you want them to do is be in compliance. But how will they get in compliance? They're going to call you, they're going to email you, they're going to go to your website, they're going to download some guideline or tip that you have posted there. So you want to make sure that not only have you identified who and what they're going to read about, but you know what you want them to do next and make sure that that gets included in the news story. So if you're talking to a reporter, you want to make sure that they have your name, your phone number, your email address, your website URL, so that that can be somehow included in the news story and people can follow up with you. Now, when? Is this something that's time sensitive? Is there a deadline, as I suggested, with a law or a municipal ordinance or regulation? Or is this something that people always need to be thinking about, right? It's perennial, like trusts and estates or gardening. Where is it that they are going to be looking for news? So you have to identify those media outlets, and we'll get to that in just a moment. And finally, and I remind you again, why will anyone care about what it is that you have to say? So in putting together your media list, you want to be thinking about who is on the other side and what do they care about? Is it time sensitive? Where are they looking to news? And above all, why will they care? Now, here are your possible media outlets. There's newspapers, both national and of course the Philadelphia Inquirer, maybe some local newspapers in your community. There are business magazines like the Philadelphia Business Journal, and then the industry magazines, whether it's law or accounting or cosmetics. There are newsletters and there are blogs. And which ones are you going to work with? Well, let's think about this. Look at your clients' websites and see, do they have any articles where they have been mentioned? Then those are the publications that they're reading, and those are the places where you want to be seen. But maybe your clients are too small or low profile and they haven't been cited. Then look at their competitors and see where they have been mentioned in the news, because that's where you want to be seen. Finally, you can just do a general online search for client and industry news and see what's out there. And that will help you to determine the best newspapers, magazines, and online resources. Now, you've identified the publications. How do you figure out which reporters you want to work with? So first of all, if you found a news story that's interesting, then you can check the reporter's byline and look at the end of the article. So you can see here's an article from a local newspaper, and it says at the bottom on the right-hand side, perhaps you can see over here, this paragraph, which I have copied here. Joseph Spector is such and such an editor, and he can be reached at this email address, or you can find him on Twitter. So right there in the article, they're telling you how to get in touch with the reporter. Isn't that easy? Or you might be able to check the masthead. That's the directory of all the reporters and editors at a publication. So you can see here, this is a list of editors and reporters at the publication. And notice it has their Twitter account, it has their LinkedIn profile, and it has a way that you can email them. And it also has their email address listed right here. What could be easier than that? Maybe you can actually look for them on Twitter because you can't figure out their email address from their article and there's no masthead. So here's one of the reporters I just mentioned from Crane's New York Business. And look down here in her Twitter bio. It says tips or chisme. Chisme is gossip in Spanish. And it gives her email address. Now, Amy, why would a reporter put their email address right there in their Twitter bio?
They want to be contacted.
Exactly. Because if you were to post a story idea on Twitter, then everybody and their sister and their brother would see it. But this way, the reporter will be contacted individually. So nobody else will know that you are sending them a story idea. To continue. You can also look and see maybe the reporter has their own website. A lot of reporters aggregate their stories on their own website. And what do we see here? It says contact. And if you go to that contact page on this reporter's website, it says to contact him, please reach out through email or get in touch with him on Twitter. So it's very easy to get in touch with a reporter by email. you can check their byline, and at the bottom of the article, you can look at the masthead of the publication in a magazine. You can look for their email address and their Twitter account or on their own website. Now, if you can't find them in any of those places, you can always look for them on LinkedIn, although reporters don't really like that as much. And there are these media databases known as Cision, Meltwater, and Muckrack. They're very expensive, so I don't encourage you to subscribe. But if you knew a friendly public relations consultant who has access to one of them, then you could ask that person for one or two addresses. So now you have developed your media profile, why you, why now, and why people should care. And you have figured out which publications, because you've looked on your client's website and their competitor's website, and you've identified which reporters and how to get in touch with them by email. So let's put all that information together, and you have an Excel spreadsheet where you're going to keep track of your media outreach. You have the name of the publication. Separate the first name and the last name, because that way you'll be able to do a merge mail. And you have their email address, if you can find it, their phone number. It's a little hard to do now because many people still working from home. And keep track of when was the last time you got in touch with them, so that you will be able to refer back to them in your connections. Now, how often should you contact a reporter? Quarterly is often enough, because your hot topics are not going to change all that often. So quarterly is often enough. But if you have news, like you've published a report, or you're going to speak at a conference, or you concluded a major transaction, then that would merit a press release. Now, reporters are just as busy as you. They get 500 emails a day, so don't pursue them too aggressively. Send an email, and then you can follow up a week later, and that's often enough, because if you do more than that, it's a turnoff. Now, let's say that you are on the phone with a reporter. It's been said many times by my colleagues, a media interview is the wrong time to have an original thought. So you want to prepare in advance and think about what it is that you're going to say to a reporter. And I'll get into this in just a minute. But let's say you have reached out to a reporter and you sent them your media profile, and then time passes and suddenly you get a call from this reporter with whom you haven't spoken before. And they're asking you about some client. And you think, oh my God, what's going on? The client hasn't told me. So this is what I recommend. And someone who got on the call at the very beginning talked about crisis communication. So I'm sure he is familiar with this drill. So if a reporter calls you, whether it's someone you know already or not, and you don't know exactly why they're calling, don't think that you know why they're calling, because it may be for some reason that's very different than what you're thinking. So I suggest that you buy yourself some time. You can say to the reporter, thank you for your call. I'd really like to speak with you, but I have someone in my office right now. If you would be so kind as to give me your name and your phone number and your email address, and please let me know exactly what you would like to discuss, because I may have to speak with someone else so that I can be more helpful to you. Right? So you want to team up with the reporter and show them that you're on their side. You want to help them with the story, but you don't know what it is that they're asking about. So buy yourself 30 minutes and say, if you will give me your contact information and let me know exactly what you want to discuss, in case I have to consult with someone else, I want to be more helpful to you. And I promise I'll call you back in 30 minutes. There is no news story that is so important that it cannot wait 30 minutes. And during that 30 minutes, you will be able to call your client and figure out what you're going to say and who's going to say it to the reporter. And then you will call the reporter back. Now, I want to point out that while you are doing this 30-minute activity, the reporter is calling someone else. So don't think that they're sitting around waiting for you. They're going to call a nosy neighbor or a competitor or somebody else who's going to give them some insight. So you want to make sure that you ask for more time and then you call the reporter back, because they're not going to go away. If you don't call back in a half an hour, they're going to call you back in 45 minutes if they really want to talk to you. Now, when you're speaking with a reporter, I encourage you to make a list of 3 important points that you want to discuss, and then print it out, and print it out in a very large font, because the reporter can't see that you have this cheat sheet on your desk. And this will help you keep your mind on what it is that you want to say. Because many times you'll have a conversation with a reporter and you'll get to the end and the reporter say, is there anything else you'd like to add? And you'll say, oh my God, I forgot about point number 1. And then you'll be able to bring it up. But if you don't prepare with your list of 3 important points and have it before you in large font so that you can refer to it easily, then it's not going to go your way. Now, I encourage you to create memorable examples of your 3 points. And this is what I call the 4 A's. So the first A is an acronym. So we all know ASAP. Let's give it a twist and say as soon as profitable. Or you can make up your own acronym, which is even better because then you have to explain it. The second A is analogy. You can say that this is as clear as day or as clear as mud. The third A is an anecdote. So you can give a brief example of a situation, or what would be the consequence of doing it, what would be the consequence of not doing it. So we have acronym, analogy, anecdote, and alliteration. See what I did there? This is why I call them the 4 A's. So when you have your 3 points, you want to use one of these A's to help you be more quotable and more memorable, because that's what the reporter is looking for. They're looking for something that they can include in their story that will make the point drive home. So you've had the conversation with the reporter, and now you're in the news. Congratulations! What are you going to do? You're going to promote the news article where you are quoted. I encourage you to print the article and save it as a PDF and put in any copyright information there that you might need to include. Now you're going to post it on your website and save that page. Save that URL as a bit.ly link, bit.ly. It's a website that will shorten any long URL. Now you're going to take that link, and here's how you're going to use it. First, you put it in your email signature, right? Here's my email signature, and look, it says industry news article, tips to be more quotable. And you can see that I have included this link right here so that a person will be able to read my article. And I send 100 emails a day. So this way I am promoting the news article. If you want, you can include the link that goes directly to the reporter's publication. You can also write about the article in your own newsletter and in your own blog so that more people will be reading it, people who already know you. You can write about the article on LinkedIn. So you can see, here's an example. A colleague of mine is an attorney. She was quoted in the New York Times. And so she posted on LinkedIn and she linked to the article in the New York Times. The reporter likes this because then it's going to drive more traffic and more clicks on that article link in the publication. You can add the article to your LinkedIn profile in the featured section and in the publication section. So the featured section is part of LinkedIn, where you have just below your about section, you can use it like a library bookshelf and put additional information here. If you're active in LinkedIn groups, you can ask a question, and then your quote in the article is the answer to that question. Maybe you want to introduce yourself to podcast hosts. Being quoted in the news means that you know what's hot and happening and what other people need to know about. And if you want to be on podcasts, this is a good calling card. You can also introduce yourself to other reporters, but give it a little twist. They're not going to write about the same thing that their competitor wrote about. So find another way to talk about the topic. Maybe you want to speak at an event. So go to your host, your organization, and say, I'd like to put together a panel, and it'll be myself and my client or my referral source or my colleague, and we'll talk about this hot topic. Is there a newsletter associated with that association? Then that's something that you can write about as well. So let's recap what it is that we've talked about this morning. We've talked about how you can use a media profile that will explain why you and why now, and WIFM, why people who are interested in what's in it for me will care about what you have to say, because it will help them to save time, save money, or make more money. We've talked about how you can identify which publications are most interesting to your market, because those are the publications that your clients and their competitors are being featured in, and how to identify the reporters who write about those topics, and how to get in touch with them by finding their email address in the article itself, or in the masthead of a magazine, or on their Twitter bio, or on their private website. We've talked about how you can prepare to speak to a reporter in a crisis situation or an unexpected call. Then buy yourself a half an hour so that you can figure out what you want to say. And then, as always, you're going to come up with your 3 points and then figure out examples, anecdote, analogy, acronym, alliteration, that will make your quote on the subject be more memorable. Think about how being quoted in the news is not one and done. You have to merchandise it and make it visible to more people so that they will see it in your email signature or on your website or on your LinkedIn profile. You can share it in your newsletter and in your potential speaking engagement and in an article that you will create for the industry newsletter. So I'm happy to take your questions, and please note that this is my contact information. I have a lot of information available for free or at the cost of your email address so that you can download it from my website. I have a monthly newsletter, and I recently published an ebook called Create and Monitor Your Marketing RBI. And it is a baseball theme and talks about the 5 ways that you can be getting more business for the modest price of $9.99. If you're interested in media outreach and you want to take a look at your media profile, send it to me, and I offer a complimentary strategic communications consultation. So Amy and Zoe, I'm happy to take some questions.
All right. Thank you so much. That was a lot of information in a very short time. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions. Before we do, though, I do want to take a picture of the group because, of course, it's all about media and getting Beacon in the news. So if you would stop sharing your screen here. Everyone's on mute.
I had a sort of a basic question. How long typically will a reporter actually talk with you for? You know, will it be 5 minutes and they're just wanting you to be quick, or is it depend? And then, you know, how do you get that point across if they say, I only have 10 minutes and, you know, do you pick 1 versus 3 points? You know, any tips about that?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked, Zoe, and yes, it does depend. You can ask the reporter at the start of the question, at the start of the conversation, how much time do we have? Right? Because that's going to determine how much time you're going to have to deliver your 3 points and to elaborate on them. So some conversations are going to be very quick And some conversations could be a half an hour, 45 minutes. It really depends on the situation. So a good guideline is to say, I'm so glad to be able to talk with you today, and I'm looking forward to the conversation that we arranged. Please tell me how much time we have, because I want to make sure that this is productive for both of us.
Hi, this is Megan Zug. Thank you, Janet, very much. I had a question back with the sample or template.
Mhm.
In the point where you said, right, 3 or 4 summary sentences, right? So that's coming before the experience and the 3 bullets below that. But can you just review again or restate what's the focus and et cetera for those 3 or 4 sentences? I didn't quite get that.
Okay, so I'll repeat what I talked about. And I said, I am a public relations and marketing communications professional with more than 30 years experience. And I focus on attorneys who have a solo practice or a small firm. And so it's something that'll give an idea very broadly of who your principal clients are or where your principal experience lies, whether it's by function or by industry or both.
Okay. So the 3 sentences are really who you are, what you do, where it's okay. Got it.
And then you can, in the next part, you're going to be a little more specific. So, right. So you're hinting at the kinds of projects or the kinds of accomplishments or the kinds of results that you've achieved. And then, the next point about the hot topics is things that are going to set you apart, that people need to know more about, that they're not paying attention to. And if they only knew what Megan Zug knows, they would save time, save money, make more money.
Right. Thanks.
Do you want to tell me about your business so I can give you a little more elaboration?
Sure. And I have a question, follow-up question is, how do we, what are some resources for us to identify, we can look at ourselves, but maybe other colleagues or peers, even through Beacon, hey, what are the 3 biggest things or what is my expertise, just to kind of narrow and pinpoint it?
Well, why don't you tell me a little bit and then I'll help you.
Sure, absolutely. So I work as a fractional or interim CFO. Yay, I can do that remotely or in the Philadelphia metro area. I love accounting, love leading other accountants, and really being more having the work I do help other businesses and organizations.
Okay, so you are a fractional CFO and you work with companies that are in certain kinds of industries and that face certain kinds of challenges, which may relate to, quarterly and annual reporting, or it may relate to monitoring cash flow, or it may relate to monitoring accounts receivable, accounts payable. It may relate to public. It may relate to, complying with reporting regulations. It may relate to money laundering and so on. It may relate to cleanup, to someone else who wasn't reporting things or handling things properly. So those are all what I would consider more functional aspects.
Okay.
That would be in the second section. But to say broadly, you're a fractional CFO who works on a remote or in-house basis for companies that are in the cosmetics or fashion or educational supplies market.
Okay, right. And as you were saying that a few concentrations might be internal controls, done SEC reporting, right? And something else to tell.
You could say forensic investigation if that's something that you do, right? But those would be more solid in the next section, the 3 to 5 bullet points.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. I love accounting too.
It's a way of storytelling.
Yes.
My own thing here. Janet, one of the, I use someone to assist me with my social media because I am I know what I'm good at, and that's not one of them. So I think it's good to have people who know what's going on. And she let me know of a area that is looking for things, and it's not necessarily reported, but it's the same type of thing where you fill out this profile and you send it to them, and they have this whole list of, I don't know, like 89 questions that you would respond to give them an idea of who you are, to get them established as well. And I'll put that, I'll give that to Zoe to be able to send out to everyone as well. But it opens up, you know, if you're into, like you said, digital communication, it'll say, what's the latest information on that? And it gets you, like I said, she's working on it, and I have yet to act upon it because it's not high on my priorities, but it should be. So I'll forward that to people as well, because it's another thing with the reporters. It's not just it's more of a industry news, I'm going to say, that has different areas, whether it's finances and things like that. So, but it's amazing to see how many outlets there are. I really like the fact that you focus on reporters, but there's so much media out there. So my question to you is, one of those is, how do you decide what is good? New York Times, I can understand, and things like that. Those are really big ones. Do you suggest going after those first, or do you suggest going after the smaller local ones first to get your?
I recommend that you work your way up.
Okay.
Right, because you know, you want to walk before you run.
Mhm.
And you know, it's not easy dealing. The reporters at those top tier publications are there because they're very experienced, and they're very good at getting information out of you, you know, which you may not be prepared to give, and you don't want to be flustered. So you want to have a little more experience. You want to walk before you run. So I would encourage you to, you know, start with the lower tier media in your industry or in your local geography before working your way up to the national media. Now, I do want to comment on something else that you said, which is there are an incredible number of directories that people might be looking for. I mean, if a reporter is looking for a source, they're going to look online for, you know, a few number of keywords, because they want to find someone who can talk about the issue, who's already been quoted in the news, right? So, you know, so you're already behind if you're not somebody who's already spoken about the topic. But it may be that it's sufficiently recondite and obscure, they're going to look in a directory. And reporters at Bloomberg, for example, have their own media resource directory of spokespeople, you know, that they have spoken with before, or a colleague has spoken with before, and so on. So I speak from time to time on the idea of how more women could be introducing themselves to reporters, because reporters want to quote more women in their news stories. So there are directories that are specific to industries, and there are directories that are specific to women, and you should inscribe yourself in as many of those as you can. And I have more information about that if someone wants to get in touch with me, or I can send it to Zoe. She can distribute it to the group. So, so you're right, there are all different kinds of directories for people who are looking for experts, whether you're allowed to call yourself an expert or not. But I want to point out that even those aren't very specific and timely, right? Because, you know, last year, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Last year, who knew that we would be talking about Ukraine every day for 3 or 4 weeks, right? So, you know, so even though people might be listed as, you know, familiar with certain countries, they're going to, or certain issues, they're going to come to the fore on an unpredictable basis. So that's why a media profile is helpful, because you can introduce yourself to reporters with something that is a hot topic now. And let's say that a subject changes, and all of a sudden something like Ukraine is important. Let's say you knew about doing business with Ukraine and, you know, international trade, right? Then you would update your media profile and send it around saying, source, I can talk about international trade in Ukraine.
Thank you.
So a media profile can be very dynamic in that way.
Yeah. Other questions from people? All right, I've got,
I think Megan had a question.
I have more, but I wanted to give other people a chance.
what I'm thinking
All
of,
right.
Go for what? I think one more we have time, right?
yeah, go ahead, Megan, for one more question. And then I'm thinking, because we have half an hour, if people are interested, we can do breakout rooms and just talk amongst yourselves. If people want to do that, because I'm not sure if everybody knows who the other people are, and we might be able to give each other ideas as well.
Okay. That's a great idea. Janet, I am, and maybe some other folks here, I'm in a bit of a transition period professionally. And I'm curious, wow, you had so much to offer us here today. I'm kind of curious to know what your professional journey has been like and how you ended up finding and being an expert, and seems like doing what you really love.
Oh, well, that's very sweet of you to ask, Megan. Thank you. So if you will go to my website, you'll see that my logo is the letter F inside the shape of an octagon. And that's because I'm not a round peg, I'm not a square peg, I'm in octagonal peg. So in chronological order, this is my experience. I was a professor of Spanish language and literature at some colleges. Then I went to an executive MBA type program where I learned about finance, accounting, and economics and corporate strategy. Then I worked as a securities analyst on Wall Street. So that's where I learned to love accounting. And then I worked in public relations and marketing communications in financial services industry. I've worked in a nonprofit, both a trade association and a museum. And my last job was at a public relations agency whose principal client was a law firm. So that's how I got connected with the legal services industry. So now my clients are very diverse. I work with a nonprofit professional women's organization. I work with a fintech company based in Chicago, whom I've never met, but through the beauty of Zoom, we're able to communicate. And I work with attorneys and accountants and business owners. So I've worked with a family-owned business in operation for 70 years that we celebrated their anniversary. I worked with a dentist who invented a toothbrush. And so you can see most of my work has been B2B, but occasionally it is consumer directed. So what I think about myself is that I'm able to, because I have this octagonal peg and very diversified background, I'm able to get my arms around another business and figure out what it is that they have to say about themselves, who they need to communicate with, and what is that point of pain of the person on the other side of the table. And then how can we convey to that person or to that company that my client represents a solution, and that's why they should work with my client. So being in the media is one process, but there are other ways that you can get in front of your target market. Oh, I hope that explains.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thanks. I think Amy wants us we're going to do something else now.
Yeah.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.